day, podcast community, Friday afternoon, our time. And who in the heck would do a podcast on Friday afternoon? On Valentine's Day, too. So everybody else is running out to dinner. We're doing a podcast. So it'll always be out there. We have a special guest. We always like to bring on younger people because the perspective of our youth is so cool. They haven't been around as much as I have to see all these different cycles. So they see the world a little differently. So I met Adrian several years ago and we reconnected and he's on our podcast. So Adrian, thank you so much for being on our podcast. Tell our viewers who you are, what you do and who you serve. And I kind of know who you serve, but just so our viewers can have a good idea.
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, um, I don't really know how to introduce myself that well. So, my name is Adrian Waweru. Who I serve. I mean, I serve God. I serve the Lord. In Jesus' name, I'm really, honestly, I'm just blessed to be here. Blessed to have opportunities in life and just to experience everything, especially like Pete said, especially in this time where everything is so revolutionary. I really can't think of a word other than revolutionary.
Mhm.
Um, Even like at this time, like every day just feels like something new, like something so things are really starting to look outside of the box rather than inside of the box, from my perspective, anyways. I'm really seeing a lot of change in a positive direction that we've never really tried to take before. And I don't know. It's just a pleasure to be, I don't know, living in this time. Yeah.
Well, it's great that you say that because for people like myself, I'm 67, so I've seen a lot of different cycles. And I came in when we were making phone calls from a payphone and we had beepers. Now we
Mm,
have a modern little supercomputer that's in our hand.
exactly.
So it's changed rapidly. And there was a picture that a person I don't remember the exact podcast, but I think it was had to do with one of my mentors, and he showed a picture Times Square, and it was horse and buggies, and it was crowded. And then 13 years later, same
Mhm.
picture, same angle, there was just a few cars on that road, and it showed how quickly we went from the horse and buggy to the automobile and what it meant for transportation.
That's
So
right.
my question is, because we talked a little bit about this before we went on the air,
Yeah.
AI is making its inroads into our technology world. What does it mean to you, and how are you using it in what you're doing now?
Yeah. So AI, what it means to me right now, I feel like there's not really a word or definition to even comprehend like what it's doing for me right now. Right now, it feels like it's a second brain for me. I use it in a way where I I have difficulty like really sometimes not inherently like looking up things or finding the answer. It's just more asking the questions on the right platform or like the right tool to ask the questions that I'm really trying to find the answers to. So over the years, it was just I either had to find my information through textbooks or reading books, which I feel like I'm a little dyslexic as well. Reading books and chapter books and try to find information that way for me was very it was very difficult. I to say to make it like mundane, it was very difficult. Like the words just never really grasped me in a way where I was like, okay, that's the information that I needed. I felt like I had to learn more than what I was actually looking for, rather than what the answer was from the question I was asking. So every time I read a book about science or math, it felt like it delved into other aspects that I really didn't feel like I needed to know. But at the same time, everything did come together at the end, but it was just very it was hard to ask the necessary questions to get the answers that I needed. So once it came to AI, for me to this day, I feel like I'm really getting the answers to what I'm asking
Mhm,
nowadays. Like to keep it like I don't know if I could think about the words, but it really I don't know. It's really allowed me to express myself or like to ask the questions that I've always been wanting to ask because
mhm,
just in my I don't know, from K through 12, I've always had, like, ambiguous questions to things that no other person was really thinking about, but then when I would ask the question, it would be dismissed or maybe I would be told, "Oh, you shouldn't even be asking that at this point," and stuff
mhm,
like that, or, "You're not old enough to know this or this," and I of course, like, I took it as that, "Okay, I just need some time, I just need to be patient," to get to a point where I can ask these questions and then I can receive these answers. So it was tough for me, like at the beginning, like learning concepts that I felt like there were more questions to and more answers to.
mhm,
I just had to be okay with what the status quo was saying. So I, I was just flowing through with the status quo, seeing like what the act or what the questions were being asked and the answers I needed to give rather than the answers that I was craving to receive, you know what
mhm,
I mean? So when it comes to AI now, I feel like I'm asking the questions and receiving answers that also allow me to ask more questions in the end. I'm not really I don't know. I always try to dive in to questions from a perspective that there's going to be more questions to be asked after I receive the answer because there's
mhm,
never like a perfect answer to anything unless like I don't know. It really is proven to be like a building block or like a foundational aspect of our life to where we don't even need to ask the question. So, I mean, with things like that, I feel like there is going to be a point. I'm trailing off here, but I feel like there's going to be a point where individuals are going to be asking the questions that we've already been asking for thousands of years. And honestly, it's just gonna give the same answer, that we've always been receiving, and then others that are going to be using AI to ask questions that have never even been asked before or that have been pondered for, I don't know, thousands of years and everything like that. I heard that AI now is, um if I could find the article. There was an article that I read about AI, figuring out a math equation that was that was like that wasn't solved for
mhm.
hundreds of years. It was like a new model of ChatGPT, I believe, where they solved a math equation that wasn't solved for thousands of years or something like that. And they solved about like 73% of the unsolved equations so far known, I would say. I don't know. It's just, I'm kind of paraphrasing, but yeah, no, right now, AI is really pushing us towards a time where we can actually grow to to society where we can not I don't know. It's going to be a new type of society. I don't know how to explain. There's not going to be as many lies or as many false claims to be said anymore. There's not
Yeah.
going to be speculation in the air. There's going to be more just okay, I have the question to this
Yeah.
or I have this question. So what's the answer to I feel like I'm trailing off here, but if you have anything to add so
Yeah,
far.
I like it because when I don't know, it was about 6 months ago, my partner was keep pushing to get me to, like, discover the power of it, and I was always in remedial reading and didn't do well in school just because of this dyslexic processing. But what I do now, I went from a slow reader to a super retainer. When I get a book, I'll put it into AI and I'll say, "Give me the 10 main points of this book." So I read that. I kind of meditate on those 10 things. I get it on audio. I listen to it at 2x speed. Then I read the
Mhm.
book. And it's almost like my brain gets activated to look for those 10 main points because let's just say the 10 give you 80% of what you want to know. So
Mhm.
and then I'll go even a step further with a lot of stuff is to start to teach it because many people have said we learn 10% of what we hear, but we retain 90% of what we teach. So if we can flip it around as quickly as we can and teach it, then we elevate our learning capacity. Because I I don't know if we talked about it or I was talking to somebody else today. Elon Musk was a like avid reader. I mean, he was as a kid. And so I would always hear these people that are doing great things that they were reading. That wasn't me, but I did listen. I was always trying to do the auditory listen and focusing on that because
Yes.
that was an easier way for me to retain information. So every time I do an AI, it has a button called like read aloud. And so
Mhm.
I'll be listening on my headset what I just took out of AI. So I'm hearing it and I'm trying to train my brain to think more. And so I'm focused on that one thing that it's going over so I can retain more. So it's kind
Mhm.
of opened up a reading, a learning style for me. But I think everybody has to pull away from it because it's just a tool. I mean, it's a powerful tool. What
Exactly.
what would you say, like, this is like it's fascinating that you said that you're in exciting times. I spoke to some freshmen at Kennesaw Mountain, and I was
Mhm.
just asking some of the questions like, who in here is using AI? And it was about a half the room. And then I asked the people that were using it, what are they using it for? And it was, that one of them, it was a writing, a couple other answers, but
Mhm.
it's coming on so fast that I think we don't know where it's going to go. We have an idea because every time you open up, I listen to YouTube. I don't listen to news. I'm seeing a
Me too.
new breakthrough of stuff. I do ad-free YouTube, so I don't break up the commercial breaks and stuff like that.
That's
What would
smart.
you
That's
say if you had to, like, I know it's hard to do this, but you're at a position that you're you're are you finished school? Are you at the still in school?
Yeah. So I'm not in Kennesaw State University, I should say. So I'm not in, say, institutional school,
Mhm,
but that still hasn't prevented me from doing my own independent learning. So I would say I am still a student in the aspect that I'm still learning what I need to
mhm,
learn every day. I'm still learning new information about LLMs and the new emerging technologies with the AI, and
mhm,
also the new supercomputers are going to be adapted into AI.
mhm,
So I mean, it's not really that I've hindered myself from learning because I'm not in an institution. It's just more that I feel like I've unlocked something that I've really been wanting to, I don't know, unlock from the very beginning. Like when
uh,
I, yes, so when I could talk about my institutional like bring up really quick, or like the I don't know, origin story. I should
yeah.
say.
Oh, yeah, because I think it's so important to know our journey through education because I think we're about to see in the next 5 to 10 years, our whole educational system change
Mhm,
completely because it was built for get a job, work 40 years, sit in a classroom, just learn like one dimensional when it's
mhm,
really exponential learning and we have so much now that we can learn from different sources. I
mhm,
don't know what a college education unless you're very specific, like doctor, engineers, different things, how maybe cybersecurity, there's going to be some that you're going to really have to be selective in what you major in. If you want a liberal arts degree and you're going to pay the kind of money they're asking, you're wasting your money because
Yeah.
it's not it's not enough to really separate you out there. So how do you feel about like the next 5 years, like as you look ahead? You can't look too far ahead because we don't know. But
Exactly.
what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I would say in the next 5 years, I feel like there's gonna be a lot happening in the next 3 years. I
Mhm.
like to think about I don't know, I feel like for me, things have always happened in the next 3 years rather than 5 years or 4
Okay.
years. Um, I feel like there's always just been, like, a big occurrence or a big event, so I feel like, I would say, like, in the next 3 years, right now, there's gonna be a gradual change. There's definitely gonna be a gradual change into an institutional learning that's gonna be widely different from what we've been doing for the past yeah, since the early 2000s, I would say. It's definitely gonna be vastly different. I'm not sure in the way that it's gonna go, though. It really right now, it is still an ambiguous question, but I feel like it is gonna go into a positive route. Um, the way that we are going to learn is gonna be it's gonna be remarkable. I don't know, to say the least. I feel like a lot of people are going to start going to institutions and schools for what they actually want to do rather than finding out what they want to do in the long
Mhm.
run, because that's what a lot of people are doing right now. Going into an institution without knowing what they're actually doing, they're
Mhm.
going to actually find a mentor in the institution to tell them or to guide them to what they want to achieve rather than coming in with goals and a purpose of how to go into the institutions and what to accomplish in the institutions before even getting into it. So I feel like I don't know, K through 12, it did serve as like a necessary foundation for learning my essentials like for social studies, science, math, history, um there's so many things. Biology. Oh my goodness, there was so many foundational um, studies and everything like that. And I
Mhm.
feel like a lot of it was necessary, even though it was repetitive. At times, I feel like that repetitive nature is what made it stick in the long
Mhm.
run. So that I feel like it served its purpose for that. There are the aspects of, being social in school and everything like that that is inherently it's important, honestly. It's very important. I didn't have that much like social interactions with a lot of people going from like K through 12, but I feel like it was a gradual change for me. Um I didn't know like a lot of English coming into the United States because I wasn't born here. So I was born in Kenya.
Mhm.
So I didn't know a lot of English. It was very hard for me to even interact with my peers or anybody like that. So I mean, growing up, it was hard like learning things in the education system, but after like repetitive nature of, knowing like how the institutions were working, and I felt like I was preparing myself like every year I was preparing myself for the next grade, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. So like I wasn't really just in the grade to just complete it. I was in the grade to know what needed to be done so I could take it on to the next grade. And then that's what I was doing most of the time until I would want to say like high school, when things got a little bit more ambiguous with the social norms and everything like that. So I felt like I had to really I was studying, I was doing good in school and everything like that. But at a certain point, I feel like I had to socialize with some individuals just so I could keep like a status or like a uh I don't know. sorry, just some type of,
Mhm.
I don't know, yeah, some type of status, that really wasn't inherently, it was nothing. It was really nothing at the end of the day about, like, status or, like, knowing, like, who to talk to, but at the end of the
Mhm.
day, I didn't really let that stop me from talking who I wanted to talk to.
Yeah.
So, when I did want to get more social, I talked to a lot more people, honestly, like, every group, I was with the gods, I was with, um, I don't know, the football teams, and I don't know, it was just I was all over the place with, like, different groups, and I was really
Mhm.
inclined to talk to anyone and everyone, and people would call me weird and other names because of it, but at the end of the day, it was the it was the expectation I was expecting when I came into this country in the first place. It was
Mhm.
that I could just talk to anyone and everyone without it being separate and being like, "Oh, I can't talk to this person because I don't know this information." For me, it was like, "Oh, let me go up and talk to this person because I want to know why they like this certain topic or this certain information or why they're into this certain thing." It wasn't like I wanted to like bash them for what they were in after I gained the knowledge. It was more I was even more intrigued. I don't know. With myself, I didn't even do any sports up until junior year when I first did wrestling in high school. So that was like my first sport that I did, and it was the only reason that I was reluctant to even start it in the first place was because I was like, oh, the guys are going to be wearing tights and they're going to be touching each other and stuff like that. Just really things that I should have just gotten out of my head and honestly thought of it just as a sport in
Yeah.
itself because we've been doing wrestling for thousands of years. It's a sport that's always been continues. It's I don't know, it's all over the world. It's not something that we have to look at it to a point where it's degenerating, I should say, because of
Yeah.
like what they have to wear and everything like that. So once I actually got into it, it shocked me. The amount of discipline, the amount of the amount of time, the amount of effort that you have to really put into it
Yeah.
for just a short match, a 6, 8 minute match with just the other individual. It doesn't seem long. Sometimes it could last about 3 minutes. It doesn't seem long, but at the end of the day, once you're actually in that circle, once you're in that ring, once you're in that match, it feels like it's lasting the whole day. Like it's never going to end, especially if the other person is just as good as you. So honestly, it was an eye opener for me.
Mhm.
And then I became a little bit more social in senior year just because I felt like I turned 18 and I felt like I was a little bit more grown adult and everything like that. So I took some unnecessary risks that maybe I shouldn't have at the time. But in hindsight, it was just more of a learning opportunity for me just to know
Uh-huh.
myself. So going into, yeah.
Do you
Oh, I'm sorry.
feel let me jump in and just ask you on this because you brought up a couple of cool things.
Yeah.
Were you always a curious person? I mean, at what how old were you when you came from Nigeria?
Oh yeah. So I actually I come from Kenya, Africa,
Oh, Kenya,
actually.
Kenya.
Yeah.
I was talking I was talking to my friend from Nigeria, and I ting okay, yes, yes, Kenya.
You're
What
perfectly
were you
fine.
curious, and what age did you come here not speaking English that you had to
Yeah.
adapt and learn a new language?
Yeah, I was very curious at the time. I still remember my early childhood. Right now it's like it's remnants and stuff like that,
Yeah.
but I would say I mean, I remember like my family and friends that I used to like grow up with and everything like that. And the time where it was around 2005, 2006, I wanna say.
Mhm.
That's when we really came over into the United States and settled into we just stayed in Georgia pretty much the whole time. But we do have, like, family all over the United States as well.
Mhm.
So that was a blessing in itself. But yeah, once we came over here, it was a culture shock. No like, it was honestly, there's no other words to say just as a
Yeah.
culture shock. I remember vividly that I lost the ability to speak my native language, but I was able to still understand what my parents were saying in their native language. Like, we speak Swahili, so
Mhm.
I would understand everything that they would say, but then every time I wanted to say something, it would come out as English. And that was like, I remember vividly, it was like during first grade, um, second grade, starting out there. But it was just, it was interesting to me. I'm not sure like what happened
Mm.
to say the least. But it was just, it felt like a fever dream at the time. But that's something I've always kept like close to me, just because it just felt so interesting. But over the years, I actually started learning Swahili again, and started speaking to it with my family and friends and everything like that. So
Mhm.
I'm more comfortable speaking it now. But just in the beginning, it was a culture shock.
Yeah.
But other than that, my early childhood experience, like coming into the United States, I loved it. I mean, I really couldn't change it for anything else.
Good.
There were some rough parts, but I mean, honestly, you can't make a sword without sharpening it sometimes,
Yeah.
you know, you can't make a perfect sword without sharpening it. So, I mean, even the rough parts made me who I am today. So I really appreciate them and appreciate where I'm at today with everything that I went through. So yeah.
It's a good attitude to have because I had a guy on my podcast. He grew up in Russia in concentration camps from age
Hmm.
5 up till he was a teenager, and it shaped him as a person. And when we've continued to stay in touch, and I was on one of his calls, and he brought up something I had never heard in all my years. We're all familiar with PTSD, which is post traumatic stress disorder. But if
Correct.
you change the D to a G,
Mhm.
post traumatic stress growth, and we grow through trauma, we grow through stress, we grow through storms. And so when you look at our life, and you're a little younger than I am, but I have,
Not a little. I mean, hey.
yeah, well, it's I think so. But here's my point.
Just a little bit, just a little bit,
Yeah,
yeah.
is like when I introduced him to my Rotary, and he joined our Rotary, which I'd love for you to come because it's a wonderful organization, very
Mhm,
diverse. So anyway, I introduced him. He's from Barcelona, and he speaks obviously very fluent Spanish, but he's been
mhm,
here since he came here on a golf scholarship back, I would say 8, 10 years ago. And he told me this. I'm introducing him to my friends, and he brought a sense of humor that I've never heard before. So I asked him, I said, like, I've never seen that side of you because we've been on the podcast probably a half a dozen, 8 times, something like that. And he was introduced to me by a friend of mine, but he said
mhm,
this. He said, my humor comes from my thinking in English, not Spanish. So he said, I get my humor from English. And I said, gosh, that's weird because he didn't know one word from English when he came here.
mhm,
And he had to learn it while he was starting college, and he had to learn to adapt to the college environment, new food, all this kind of stuff. But he said
mhm.
over time, he just learned that humor in English. So when he goes back, his family can't see his humor because he's not talking in English. His parents don't speak any English at all. And so,
Mhm,
how did you process like your learn? So your Swahili is your native tongue. You're learning
mhm.
English. How did you? How do you think? Did you find it difficult to think in one versus the other, or how did you handle that?
I mean, it in the beginning, it was I wouldn't say it was a challenge in the beginning. I remember early on, it was oh, I don't know. There was a lot of I don't know. Right now, it just feels like a lot of holes, but I do remember that it was difficult for me to speak English in the beginning. I started taking like ESOL classes my early on in my K through 12. Um so I, I I do remember that I did have like a stuttering um I had a really big stutter when I was younger. So
Mhm,
I mean I that did affect like how I was able to speak fluently, like, just out just outwardly, but when it
mhm,
came to thinking how I was speaking, I feel like that was I don't know, it was inherently I was inherently learning faster on how to think, how to speak, rather than it coming out of my mouth, if that makes sense. So, I
mhm,
became like an internalized reader, per se. So, like, whenever I read books and everything like that, um, I was just reading them internally at a really fast rate. But then whenever I would pick up a book and read it, it would I would be slow at it. I would stutter over the words and some words just jumbled up and almost like dyslexia, like you said. But yeah, over the years I've been just practicing on that because I've seen that that's been a hindrance in
mhm,
my life for a lot of things that I want to do and want to pursue. And I feel like it's something that a lot of people don't really struggle with. So I just felt like that is something that I can overcome at the end of the day, whether it be through just repetition, whether it be through um, I used to try to read Harry Potter books
mhm.
just to gain, more knowledge or more knowledge in how to read and everything like that. But it never I mean, some of them were good, but it never really allowed me to understand English in the way that I needed to understand it, if that made sense. So,
Uh-huh.
yeah, just like you said he was from Russia, correct?
Well, like the other person was Russia. He was from Barcelona, but
Barcelona.
that he said he thinks in English. So but the Barcelona, well, the person from he's actually grew up in Russia. He talked about the trauma that, our childhood shapes our emotional kind of character. And
Mhm.
so it helped him later in life because he had such a dramatic, childhood that you're in this concentration camp and you're 5 years old and you're
I
trying
know.
to process, is that normal? You don't know what normal is because you've never seen anything different than that. But it
Mhm.
made him, I mean, this guy's a composer. I mean, when I looked at his resume, because I asked him, I said, "How'd you find me?" It's kind of like when you texted me, because my partner said, "Hey, there was a gentleman named Adrian that left a message." I said, "Oh, okay," and he gave me your number. And so then I was at the gym coming out, so I decided to give you a call. It was pretty,
Yeah.
and I was going like, I don't remember meeting an Adrian in the last couple months, but it's like you just go out there and you talk to people. I can tell because
Mhm.
you really helped me process because the pharmaceuticals I was having to try to make figure out these things. And when
Mhm.
people help people, you don't know when it's going to circle back because you just go out there, you have that servant heart. And I too believe in Jesus, and I
Yes,
live by
sir.
my faith and relationship. So I
Amen.
treat people like, hey, I treat people like hey, what is it? Love your neighbor as yourself.
Exactly.
I do. I practice that. So it
Exactly.
does kind of like present a different side sometimes because just like you did, you circled back. It was a couple years ago. I mean, it was
Mhm.
crazy, but it just happens that way when you go out there with that servant heart and you're just helping people, that it comes back to circle in a positive way. So
Exactly.
I do want to give our podcast. We have a sponsor now, so
Oh,
I'm going
yeah.
to see if I can find that sponsored link. Yeah, here we go. So Growth Day is our personal development sponsor. They have a program. It's about almost 500,000 people worldwide, and it's personal development. And it's kind of like, and I'll ask you this question after I kind of give our sponsors a little bit of plug.
Of
You can
course.
try this for 7 days, and it's
Mhm.
really, we call it the 5 to Thrive, and it's doing 5 things in the morning. Daily Fire, Brendan Bouchard is the founder of it. He's probably the most well-known person in the world of really giving back and creating content, coaching, and so he speaks to us each day about a framework for life. And I journal it, and then I try to teach it, not every day, but I try to teach a couple times a week. But the reason
Yeah.
I do it is, you mentioned mentors, and it's so important to find mentors in life. And I can't say when I was 20 and that I thought that way, but when I talked to Lucas, is his name, I was blown away because he's 24, maybe he's 25 now.
Mm.
He gave his 3 principles, and were like discipline, hard work, and being kind. And I was going like, dang, I wish I would have had that back then, because that wasn't the 3 words I ever thought about when I was 25. But it just shows you the maturity of some people. And the thing about Growth Day is when somebody's speaking to you each day and challenging you and helping you to frame your thinking,
Mhm.
it's so important because we have these beliefs. And I had a pastor on one time, and it was about 2 years ago, and there was tension was high. Everybody was trying to at each other's throat. There was a CNN group and the Fox group, but there's nobody in between. See,
Right.
Dad, I didn't want to talk to you. And family members were saying, "Oh, you voted for that person. I don't want to talk to you." So I said, "What do you think of this?" And he goes, if we just would sit down and give somebody grace, I don't have to
Mhm.
agree with everybody, but listen to them, respect them. And,
Exactly.
everybody has that if you want to think that way, that's more power to it. And it's just like respect people and give people grace when it comes to what their belief system is. Because hey, you don't know what kind of day they're having, where they've been, how they've shaped their beliefs. So, but Growth Day
Exactly.
is wonderful, and it really helps us to tap into mentors, because
Mm.
I don't say it. I have 5 major trends that I talk about. Well, the sixth trend is personal development, and it's and helped me immensely in the 10 months that I've been exposed to it. So that's my commercial plug. But here's my question to you.
Yes, sir.
I had it on another podcast, and this lady was a person of faith, very strong Christian. And so I
Mhm.
would ask, I sometimes I didn't do it on this one, but I would say, what kind of books have shaped your development? And so she said the Bible, which I firmly believe. I read it every morning.
Mhm.
However, there's a gentleman by the name of Stephen Furtick. He's a pastor up in Charlotte. A really
Mhm.
a very dynamic. I think he has one of the largest churches on the southeast. Well, he was interviewed by Brendan Bouchard, the founder of Growth Day, and
Yeah.
he said it was basically like, what's your thoughts when it comes to your belief system and stuff? And it was like, look, he's foundational, reads the Bible, preaches, and all that. But he said, our development, finding books that'll help us become better at what we do. It might be Think and Grow Rich. It might be um, How to Win Friends and Influence People. All these different classical books out there that
Mhm.
the person that was on my podcast said she doesn't read any books like that. And I was going,
Really?
okay. I mean, hey, everybody has a choice, but I think sometimes we say, I just don't want to read anything but the Bible. And I think
Yeah.
it's the foundation of everything we want. But there's other things like even people that are good writers can communicate their whole like life, and you can read their whole life in a book. And so you
Exactly.
can learn from a person's lessons that they spent months, years, sometimes many years writing.
Mhm.
What would you say when it comes to personal development? Are there any books that you've read that stand out that you might be able to share with our viewers?
Yeah, I've read countless books, honestly. The genres and everything like that. Like how I said, I talk to everyone.
Hmm.
It's pretty much the same thing with my books, and honestly, with music and a lot of what I listen to, or sorry, a lot of what I watch. I like to see things from the author's perspective rather
Hmm.
than the topic's perspective. So, I mean,
Yeah.
recently I was going to bring this up earlier, and funny that you mentioned about books. Right now I'm reading an audio or listening to an audiobook, I should say, on Audible called You're Not Listening by Kate Murphy.
Okay.
Um, that one I'm about, let me see here. Yeah, I have about an hour and 2 minutes
Hmm.
left on it, but
Yeah.
it's a phenomenal book, recently for me. I feel like it's really delved into a lot of things that I've been struggling with. Just not listening in the aspects of not just myself, not listening to other people, but listening to myself as well.
Hmm.
It's been hard to really I feel like I've been having two internal fights with myself, just either staying in line to do the right things or just do as I please and continue on with, I don't know, a surprise throughout the day, just waiting for a surprise. But I'm not listening to what I truly want, what's going to really make me into the person that I want to be in the
Hmm.
future, rather than self gloat myself about things that have happened in the past and bash myself about the negative aspects about my past. It's more I see the future as a positive opportunity because
Yeah.
it's not there yet, but we could still influence it in so many ways in the current time that we have now. So yeah, it's been a really good book. And I've been recently over it was Christmas, or around Christmas. I got a little Christmas money from my family members, and I decided to just order a bunch of books on Audible. Right now I have about 50 titles. Let me see. But the first one that I started with initially, um, it was Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Yes. Classic.
Yes,
Classic.
th-
Oh, I like that's
exactly.
the Bible of habits. You know,
Exactly.
I had after I read that book, I totally agree. I stack those habits, and I always get to that point where I try to practice what he talks about. And that
Mhm.
is a classic, an absolute classic, because Brendan says it, our habits are our outcome. If you want to
Yes.
look at somebody's habits, you'll see the outcome that will be result from it. If you hang around people that smoke, drink, and party, you're going to be right there with them. So you have to be
Exactly.
careful with the habits that we, you know, make a part of our life. Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah, for our listeners. Atomic
Yes.
Habits. I love it. The one on the screen, I had to put it up there. That's my favorite on Audible.
I
This
seen
guy
that. Yeah.
changed everything for me because I'm in the digital marketing space or was. And it was
Mhm.
always frustrating that I would create a strategy for a client and then Google would change the algorithm. And it was to be
Mhm.
like wipe me out. And then I'd have to start over almost, not completely, but you never could figure out what would get the attention of Google. So you're always trying to just do things, and it was a hard business. But this guy changed all my thinking because when you create 7 hours and 11 buying signals and have four platforms, people have a chance to get to know you, like you, and trust you. I've probably listened to this book at least 8 times on Audible. It's just
Wow.
my go to book because he's the guy. I think I told you that he doesn't set goals anymore because he used to. He just does. He just practices creating a brand online so people can get to know him. And when people
Hmm.
get to know you, if you offer that value, they're going to want to do something with you. So that's what he practices in this book. But Audible is great. I probably have 85 titles in there, and it is wonderful. And I tell you, I could go on and on, but I want our viewers. Let me get this off
Yeah.
the screen. Hold on here.
I actually just put
Okay.
it on my wish list here just so
Oh, it's a
this is gonna be
classic.
the next title. Yep.
Oh, it's a good one.
See.
It is a
Oh,
good
yeah,
one.
if it shows. Mhm.
Yes, that's a good one. Okay. So I want you to tell our viewers, let me get
Yes,
to
sir.
it here. How can they get a hold of you? Because they're gonna
Yeah.
want to get a hold of Adrian. Hold
I
on.
don't know who's gonna get a hold of me. Honestly, I always feel like I'm such a boring individual. I don't really do that much except to
Oh,
just keep to myself and get on the internet just to see what's going on in the world,
hey,
but
I think look, I don't believe that for one bit. And we talk to our viewers is we have boring businesses because we say the same thing over and over again. But you
Mhm.
got to remember that what's boring to you is not boring to other people. So tell our viewers, how could they get a hold of you, Adrian?
Yeah, I mean, if you guys want to get a hold of me, there's my email there, xadrianbusinessx@gmail.com.
Mhm,
That is my primary email. I use that for a lot of my ventures right now.
mhm,
But yep, I also do have my LinkedIn right now. It
mhm.
was deactivated for a bit, but I reactivated it recently just so I could get on this podcast. Um, I'm running out of breath just speaking, but
Awesome.
yes, sir. But I mean, yeah, right now I do have those two platforms.
Okay.
I will get my Instagram up and running again here soon. Maybe if we schedule like another podcast or something in the
Yes.
future.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. I want to
Yeah.
give our viewers too, because we've gone longer than most. And so I know some people are going to be listening to this, and I want to
Awesome.
give a gift to our viewers. So let me get to it. So we have what we call a master class. This is
Yeah.
a class of strategies because as we shift into the digital economy, the creators economy, it's so important to have a strategy. And we teach people, there's 10 steps, and the master class is our free gift to our listeners that they
That's
can
amazing.
enjoy. Really, it's so crazy out there that if you don't have a strategy, you'll be knocked around like a ping pong ball because like you said,
Honestly.
with AI, it's you can't plan out more than a couple years because you don't know. I mean, I said 5 years. That's probably way longer than we can plan out. But we want our
Exactly.
viewers to really be able to help grow their businesses. And so our gift to them is PeteKane.me PeteKane.me /masterclass. Okay. So
Awesome.
Adrian, as we wind down, so what would be the one thing that you would want our viewers to take home from our podcast today?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the one thing that just keeps on coming to my mind, the first thing that came to my mind is just continue to be curious. Um, don't allow yourself to be st- don't allow yourself to have just one goal in life because once you reach that goal, you'll inevitably feel like that's all there is to achieve. And even once you get to like a certain age or a certain I don't know, some social barrier that you get to, you can pass that because honestly, it's just a figment of what society has been making so I don't know, so fearful. It's almost like believing in the supernatural as if it is natural, you know? It's just it you shouldn't be thinking like that. You should just be thinking about like what's actually in front of us, what's actually going to take us into the future.
Yep.
Ask the questions about what's really going to revolutionize humanity, what's really going to push us towards the next frontier rather
Mhm.
than issues that we've already handled and everything like that. Let's be
Yes.
curious in the ways that we've never been curious before without, you know, without being fearful about what's the unknown.
Yeah.
Because I feel like once we know what the unknown is, then we'll figure out so much, so much that we've never really thought of. I don't have the words right now for some reason, but
No, it's
I
yeah,
mean,
that's really good. I love that you emphasize being curious because it'll take you a long way for our viewers to just hold on to that one word is like be curious about everything and you'll never be starved for really growth because if being curious you'll grow and that we want as people whatever you're doing we all know the importance of growing and I remember what a friend of mine I probably need to bring it up to him but he had graduated from Notre Dame and he had engineering degree and he made a comment to me, and it obviously stuck because I still remember it. He said, I don't want to read another book the rest of my life. I'm tired of reading, because he had just been overloaded with subject matter after subject matter
uh,
after subject matter. But the essence is keep learning no matter what. Our age of learning will always serve you if you just have curiosity and that leads you to learning. You'll never be starved for fun and excitement. So,
yes,
Adrian,
sir.
we will bring you back. I mean, by golly, we will bring you back. And I love your setup
Oh,
there.
thank
You know
you.
what? I do a lot of these podcasts. Nobody's ever shown up as professional as you've shown up. You look, I mean, I could be your guest because I mean, it's like crazy good. So thank
I don't even have that much here, honestly. It's
oh,
just a
well, it
little.
just maybe it's the perception of it. It just looks very professional. So
Thank
thank
you.
you so much.
Thank you. Oh,
Well,
thank
I
you, Pete. It's
appreciate
been a
you,
pleasure.
especially on a Friday afternoon. Most
Yes, sir.
people are off having a good time Friday afternoon, and you're here dedicated to our viewers to really help them understand the mindset because we love people that are younger to bring a perspective to our viewers
Yes,
because it's
sir.
the world's changing fast and we've got to be ready for the change. So
Yes, sir.
thank you so much, Adrian. Appreciate you being with us.
I appreciate you, Pete. And this has just been a pleasure through and through. I hope everyone that's watching, listening, and viewing in just has a blessed day, a blessed
Mhm.
week, a blessed time through everything that we go through. And honestly, just think about it as right now we're inventing electricity all over again. It's Nikola
Mhm.
Tesla all over again. And
Yep.
then it's going to be Thomas Edison. So, I mean, just keep on thinking about like that and you'll see how far we'll go. And yeah, I mean, I expect to see everyone who listens and tunes in at the end of everything. And yeah, at the end of what is it? The universe the Universe Highway? I forgot that book. Hold on. I was gonna
Yes.
say something intelligent here, but now I'm
Okay.
messing it up. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, a reference to that, but we're gonna meet at the end of the universe or at the end of the timeline where we're all just gonna be partying and everything like that. So yeah, no, I
That's
really
awesome.
appreciate you, Pete. I
Hey, look,
appreciate
I'm glad
everyone here.
we hooked up when we did and you came on and were a guest on our show. Thank you so much, Adrian.
And thank you, Pete. You take care now, okay?
You bet.